Hello everyone, Andrew here, and welcome to today's video where I wanted to talk about a special edition game that I just received in the mail. I ordered this back in April of 2022 and just received it a few weeks ago and, just opened it now and wanted to share it with you all and share my thoughts regarding it. It is a game that I was really looking forward to, but when it was finally released, I had mixed thoughts on it. And also, since it is a special edition of a game that kind of had a limited run, it meant that you didn't get it until like months after it came out because they kind of take all the orders and then they produce it and then they ship it out. So if you want to play the game when it's like actually released, you pretty much have to either buy the digital or buy a standalone physical, from somewhere else. So unfortunately, I've already played this game before I received the special edition, and I had mixed thoughts on the game itself, which kind of made me think, did I make the right choice ordering the special edition of it? So we're going to talk about this game and the game that it's pretty much based on, released back on the Super Nintendo. You would know what it was if you're keeping up with my channel. I just did a long play of it, and that is the original Super Nintendo Pocky and Rocky, a fantastic scrolling shooter game. Everything about Pocky and Rocky is phenomenal. It looks really cutesy at first, it can deceive you for sure, but the gameplay is amazing, the graphics are amazing, the music is amazing. There's just nothing I can complain about in regards to Pocky and Rocky. So when I heard it was getting a remaster of sorts, and we're going to talk about that, because is the remaster? It's definitely a conversation to be had. I was so excited. So I figured, Pocky and Rocky is not a series that gets merch or even new games all that often, so knowing that there was going to be a special edition and all that, I had to get it, even though it resulted in me having to pretty much buy another copy of the game since the special edition took so long to get here, and it also meant that I paid a lot more for the special edition, and it comes with a lot of stuff that I don't normally worry all that much about. So this is the special edition box set of Pocky and Rocky Reshrined. It's just a very basic brown box with Rocky's eyes on it. And who's Rocky, you might ask? Well, it's this guy right here, because there was also a plushie of actual decent size. So often, special editions will come with a plushie or something and it's like this big, but this guy is actually a really nice size. And the way it worked is that there were two different special edition sets. There was one that came just with like the box sets, and one that was just the game with the plushie and not the stuff that came in the box. And I bought this from a website called Games Rocket, which when I first found them looked super bootleg, and I didn't know how I felt about ordering games from them. And that's the thing. When it came to Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, finding information about it was like so difficult. Even finding information about it now feels like pulling teeth. If you go to the Wikipedia page for this, it doesn't even have its own page. It has like a really small paragraph about the Reshrined version of Pocky and Rocky on Pocky and Rocky's main Wikipedia page. Like, there's just no information about this game out there. And last year, I guess it was probably late last year or early this year, I found out Pocky and Rocky Reshrined was coming out, and it mentioned somewhere about there being a special edition. So I'm like, okay, well, I definitely need to get my hands on that because of how much I love Pocky and Rocky, but it was just so hard to find information on, because again, it wasn't like limited run games. I had to go to like this really weird website again called Games Rocket, which I wondered if they were even legit, but I ended up getting all of this. So I guess my money went to somewhere, which resulted in me getting the product that I ordered. And I paid with PayPal, which I know that there's issues with them these days, but this was back in April, and I've always had really good luck with PayPal, where like if I pay for something and it doesn't end up being shipped to me or something like that, just open a dispute, and they were always really good at getting my money back. So even though I didn't really know what to think about this website, I kind of had confidence that if something went really wrong, hopefully I would be safe in the end. It also looks like it's now available on another website called like Strictly Limited Games. There are just so many websites now that have like exclusive games and things like that. It just confuses the heck out of me. But if you do like what you see here, you do like what we talked about today, you want to check out Pocky and Rocky Reshrined for yourself, and you might want the special edition, that's another website that you can check. Because yeah, again, no one's really talking about this game, and if it's anything like the other Pocky and Rocky games which have been released over the years, even again, if depending on how I feel about the game, there's a part of me that's like, well, maybe I didn't need to order the special edition. Just, having the game is enough, because the game was kind of so-so, and again, we'll get into that. But again, based on other Pocky and Rocky games, 10, 20 years down the road, is this one gonna, skyrocket in value as well? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But it's funny, speaking of GameStop though, because yeah, back in the day, that was how I ordered my games. I didn't have a computer to order things on. You just went down to your local GameStop and prayed that they were going to get in whatever it was that you were looking for if it wasn't already on the shelf. And I actually have a Pocky and Rocky related GameStop story where in the early 2000s, the third North American installment of the Pocky and Rocky series was released for Game Boy Advance. I just read about it in Nintendo Power, and again, couldn't just go on the internet and buy games back then, so I went down to GameStop and asked if they had it. So like 10-year-old me goes into the store, I can barely reach the counter, look up at the guy, I'm like, excuse me, do you have Pocky and Rocky with Becky, which is what the game is called. Great name, right? And the guy has probably never laughed so hard in his life. And even like the people standing around the counter started laughing at me. This poor 10-year-old who just wants to know if they have this game he's looking for. So I was like laughed out of the store, and I never had confidence again to go and ask if any stores had Pocky and Rocky with Becky, which is really unfortunate because it is now one of the rarest and most expensive Game Boy Advance games out there. And because of that guy and all those other mean people, I never got my hands on it. But if you want to play it without the embarrassment of going to stores and asking if they have it, it is currently on the Wii U eShop for like $4, which is the cheapest it will ever be. So make sure you get on there and download that before the eShop unfortunately disappears in the near future, because again, I don't believe there's any other way to play it unless they do get Game Boy Advance games on the Switch, and hopefully it would be one of the ones that goes on there. But otherwise, you're going to be paying a lot to play it on the GBA. I'd still love to get my hands on it someday, but who knows at this point. So yeah, when I had the chance to get this, I definitely wanted to take it before I missed out on it. And if it was a game I really liked, obviously I really want to have the special edition with it. But even if it wasn't, I guess it's probably gonna go up in value in the future. In terms of what's inside the box, let me get you the whole lowdown here. Inside there you get a bookmark, reversible poster, postcard set, acrylic standee, sticker sheet, collectible coin, charm, enamel pin, soundtrack, leaf-shaped eraser, and a manual. Because yes, there actually are standalone physical copies you can buy of Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, but they don't come with a manual. The only way you get a manual these days is if you buy, massive special editions, unfortunately. And typically I'm not all into like the little, trinkets and stuff that special editions tend to come with theyese days. Like nothing in there particularly, wows me. Like I have postcards I've gotten from so many games that came as like a pre-order bonus, and I never use them. I just, they're just like a thing that you then, kind of display on the shelf. So I'm not too really worried about anything that came in here, but it's just neat to own. And again, Pocky and Rocky stuff is not something that comes out every day, so I was kind of happy to get my hands on that. But let's talk about the actual game itself, because again, I loved the original Pocky and Rocky. It's just such a fun game. I have nothing to complain about it. And again, I uploaded a long play of it recently, where if you want to see more of what the game is like, definitely check that out. It was a lot of fun. So when I heard about Reshrined, I was like, that is just so cool. I'm so excited for this. And when you hear the name Reshrined, you think it's just going to be like a remaster of the original. And when you turn the game on, you get that title screen with the classic title screen music. You start up the game, there's like story mode now, which the game always had like a story, but now it's like a specific story mode. You're jumping into that, and the first level looks exactly what you would expect a remastered version of the first level from the original game to look like. The music's remastered, everything looks so nice, the sprite work is awesome. Again, this is exactly what you'd expect from a remastered version of Pocky and Rocky original, and it was just such a blast seeing that all updated into beautiful HD in the modern day. Again, it was really great. Of course, there were, they made some updates and some, minor enhancements in certain places. It wasn't 100% identical, but that's what you'd expect. You get to the boss, you beat him, but then, no, it's not over yet. The boss has like a second stage. They've added that in, and oh, my mind was blown. I was so happy. I was so ready to just start like recommending this game to every single person I had ever met. I was having so much fun. So in the original game, it's like the simplest story is this: Pocky and Rocky, all of the kind of goblins that they live with gets mind controlled by this guy called Black Mantle. So you travel through 6 stages to go and defeat him, to break the spell that's on everyone. And it's just simple enough, very good. And you then start up level 2 of Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, where to this point, everything seems it's exactly as it was in the original game. But now they're taking more liberties with level 2. It's still very good, but you can tell that the level design, you know, they're definitely being a lot more open with their interpretation of what the original one looked like. So I'm like, okay, that's very interesting. I guess clearly, you know, it's not just a, you know, a straight remaster now. They're kind of mixing up how the levels are going to play out. Fair enough. But still, you know, they keeps all the basic concepts that you would expect. You go through the forest, you get to the raft, and at the end of that, again, you get the boss, but it's not just the boss taken out of the first game. It's like up to 11. With the craziness and the graphics and how over the top it is. And, you know, I was just so impressed to that point with the improvements that they were putting on this game I already loved so much. I was just really, really enjoying Pocky Rocky Reshrined. But then after level 2, that's when things get weird. Because, you know, normally you're done level 2 and you're off to level 3, the graveyard. But no, in Reshrined, Black Mantle appears and murders Pocky in cold blood. She is dead. And that does not happen in the original. I can tell you that as someone who's played it many, many times. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And suddenly, level 3 is not the graveyard as you would expect it to be. Pocky is dead, and level 3 takes place in the afterlife. So, okay, I did not expect there to be all new content in this game. I thought it was going to be a remaster based on the name, and the first 2 levels would make you think that. But now suddenly there's new levels, and the story is going to like all these crazy places. I was in. I was like, okay, I am so on board for new Pocky and Rocky content. And this first new level was awesome. It fit right in to what I expected from Pocky and Rocky. Again, the music was great, it looked great, it played great. I was having so much fun with this. Like, I was like, all right, I'm in this. I'm in this for the ride. Just take me wherever you're gonna take me. This is a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed that. But then you get to the end of level 3, and it's fascinating because the bosses in the first 2 levels, which were based on levels from the original game, had these like really over-the-top interpretations of the original bosses. But now the boss in level 3 is a lot more mellow. You know, they don't have like a hyper stage at the end after you get them down to low health or anything like that. It was just very basic. So it's already like, okay, well that's kind of weird that you're thinking, you know, all the bosses are gonna be like really over the top. But now this felt more like a very kind of toned down boss that you'd expect to see on the Super Nintendo, but still very good. So you beat level 3, and in level 4, you actually play as a new character, and it's like, okay, I wasn't expecting new characters now. And unfortunately, what happens is when they introduce a new character in a level that you're forced to play as, you're not so much focusing on the level anymore. Now you're focusing on, okay, I'm suddenly forced to use this character I've never played as before. And even though when you pause, it does offer you an opportunity to see like a digital instruction manual, so you can kind of get the instructions on how each of the characters may play differently. But I wasn't a big fan of, you know, now suddenly, instead of just enjoying the game, I'm figuring out this new character, figuring out how their moves work, and, you know, focusing less on just, you know, the gameplay itself. Because in the original Pocky and Rocky, you picked either Pocky or Rocky and played through the entire game as them. Or now they're kind of like, you know, throwing new characters at you in every level. It was a weird experience for sure. And also, unfortunately, level 4 was not as good as level 3, or of course, you know, the 2 that came before it, which were based on the original game. And that would be okay. But the problem you eventually realize is that these levels that they're adding in aren't in addition to the levels from the original game. They are actually replacing the levels that you would have played in the original game. So there's no graveyard anymore. There's no mountain anymore. So if they're going to add new content in and replace older content, it has to be better than the content it's replacing. And again, while I really like that 3rd level that was new to Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, unfortunately, the 4th, 5th, and 6th levels do not add up to being, you know, what they were in the original game. Now, there are 8 levels in Pocky and Rocky Reshrined as opposed to the 6 that were in the original game, but 2 of the levels in Pocky and Rocky Reshrined are literally just bosses. And none of the levels in the original game were like that, so it's almost like it is kind of still the same number of levels, in a way. Just where, you know, there's 8 now, but 2 of them are pretty much just only boss fights. So yeah, you play as this new character, and I'll admit that the first time I played through the game, it was a lot more jarring than the second time I just played through it to get footage and to refresh my thoughts on the game. I enjoyed it a bit more. knowing what to expect, because as someone who played the original game and again came in thinking it was a remaster, it's just very jarring to all of a sudden have it, okay, first level's a remaster, second level's a remaster, and then, massive turn, suddenly it's not what you were expecting at all, and the game just starts jumping all over the place. I'm curious how one's experience with Pocky and Rocky Reshrined would compare to if you were someone who was like a very seasoned veteran with the original game, versus if you were someone who had never experienced Pocky and Rocky before and went in as Reshrined as your first game. You wouldn't be like me and, expecting or anticipating the game to go certain places for it to just suddenly kind of take these massive turns and divert your expectations. It was just such a weird experience. And unfortunately, again, if you're going to change up the original game this much, to the point where you're literally retconning it, the story ends up being, and I will have put a spoiler warning on the screen prior to this point, but just be aware that we are talking about the story for Pocky and Rocky, which is not the main thing you worry about when you play a Pocky and Rocky game. When I play Pocky and Rocky on Super Nintendo, I'm not all that concerned about the story. I'm mainly worried about the gameplay and the incredible music and just how much fun it is overall. Where story is kind of the thing that's there, and you read it the first time you play, but otherwise you're probably going to skip it every time after that. Where in Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, 1 minute you're in the present day, and then suddenly you're dead, and then suddenly you're 600 years in the past, and then suddenly you're like right outside the final boss's castle. Where in the original Pocky and Rocky game, you get this overworld map, which was actually mentioned to me in a comment on my last video. It reminds us a lot of the Ghosts and Goblins map, which is true, and I love that. It puts into perspective this adventure that you're going on. You can see, the progress you've made, exactly what it is you're doing, and it just is the perfect thing to set up your adventure. Where Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, it's again like present day, now you're dead, now you're 600 years in the past, now you're outside the castle, and there's just no cohesiveness to exactly what it is you're doing. You are just jumping all over the place and doing what seems like arbitrary things, unfortunately, and not working on the story itself. So again, the story is that you beat Black Mantle at the end of the original Pocky and Rocky, at the end of level 6 of Pocky and Rocky on the Super Nintendo. But he has like a final trump card up his sleeve after you defeat him, apparently, where he can go back in time and change the events of the past. So this game retcons the first game by saying that after you defeat him in the Super Nintendo game, he goes back to where you were at the end of level 2 and kills you, thus altering the events of the Pocky and Rocky timeline to now be whatever's happening in this game instead of what it was in the original Super Nintendo game. And that's just so weird. Why? Why did anyone think that was necessary when the original Pocky and Rocky was already so good? And if you're gonna do this, it better be better than the game that you're retconning, and I'm not sure that it is. And again, it really makes it hard for me to recommend Pocky and Rocky Reshrined to anybody, because I love the Super Nintendo one so much. It is just such a phenomenal game that how do I recommend them this game now that goes and retcons everything I loved so much and replaces it with content that is just very... It's not bad, but it's definitely underwhelming if you're someone who's played the Super Nintendo game, I felt. Whew. Hopefully everyone's following. No one's watching this anymore. You've all quit the video. It's just some random guy ranting about a game that he has loved for like 25 years now. But okay. Where was I? So you beat level 4 as this new character, and again, level 4 is okay. You can see elements of the levels that it left out. Like, it leaves out the cave part of the graveyard with the kind of, shifting walls and floor, and, they incorporate that now into level 4 of Pocky and Rocky Reshrined. But if you're just going to take those elements and put them into the levels that you're making anyway, why not just put the old levels in? They were perfectly fine. But oh well. So, okay, we beat level 4 now, so we go on to level 5, and suddenly you're playing as another new character. So instead of just being able to enjoy the game, you're constantly trying to get used to, new character after new character. And this one, Hotaru, is just... So she has a spear instead of actually having a shot that you can shoot. So, you're kind of getting used to that. It definitely feels a little bit different than what you're used to, just being able to, fire all over the place. And this level entirely consists of floating ships. And you can kind of tell at this point, maybe this was like a budget saving thing. It's constantly just kind of the same assets used over and over again. Where in the original game, the floating ship that you are on is just a segment of a larger level, so it doesn't feel like, they were just, throwing this out there and, kind of overusing this one trick. But in Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, when the whole level is just, these floating airships, it kind of gets old. And also what's cool about the floating airship in the original Pocky Rocky is that it's pretty much the only auto-scrolling portion of the game. So that definitely feels different compared to everything else you've played at the time, where in Pocky Rocky Reshrined it's going from ship to ship to ship to ship to ship. It's not as original, and it's just overall, not that exciting. It definitely doesn't feel like it stands up to the levels that were in the original game, as I've been saying. So again, you beat this level, and then you go on to the next level, and the next level is just, Pocky is somehow now 600 years in the past as well, and he just literally fights a boss. That is pretty much it. There's this boss in this kind of horizontal room, and you run back and forth a few times beating up this boss, and that's it. That's the entirety of a level. And again, just like the last level, how it felt like, they put all these just floating ships around, kind of reusing the same assets. It definitely felt like there was a budget thing going on, because, the earlier game is just so beautiful. You can tell there was so much effort put into it. But now, you're getting later into the game. The money's running out. The time is running out. So I don't know if, this was supposed to be a bigger level at some point and just kind of threw a boss in there and called it a day, but that's where we're at now. And then you get to level 7, which is Black Mantle's castle, which is also in the original game. So again, it's so bizarre. Like, you die, Pocky dies after the 2nd level of the original game, and you get dumped at the 5th level, at the end of Pocky Rocky Reshrined. So for some reason they skip level 3 and 4 in the middle there. It's just so weird. It's just like, why? And what you find out along the way is that Black Mantle is actually a girl named Anna, and she has a tragic backstory. Now it's like, at the end of course she gets redeemed, because it's a very big thing these days for, it can't just be an evil bad guy like Black Mantle was in the original one. He's just doing evil things because he's an evil guy, and you go beat him up and everyone's happy at the end. But nowadays, villains can't be that simple. They all have to have tragic backstories. They all have to be redeemed by the end. I don't care all that much for that personally. I didn't think that Black Mantle needed the backstory. It is what it is. Maybe, again, if you haven't played the original and you're playing Reshrined now, you'll enjoy that more. Or maybe you're like me and you also feel like, this is kind of unnecessary, because not only that, Anna, Black Mantle, is also being controlled by another demon who ends up being the true boss of the game after you've gone through Black Mantle's castle, which combines levels 5 and 6 of the original Pocky and Rocky into one. And it's like, they just make bizarre decisions. Like in the original Pocky and Rocky, you enter the castle and the level proceeds to the right, where in Reshrined, you enter the level and it proceeds to the left instead. It's like, why? Why make that decision? The first level was literally like a straight remaster. Every turn, every corner was the same as in the original Super Nintendo game. And now you can't even get that right for the castle? Like, I don't know. It just makes no sense to me. And then eventually, that level transfers into what would have been level 6 of the original game, and then you fight Black Mantle at the end of that. Very strange though, very strange. And another thing to note is that the original Pocky and Rocky had 3 mini bosses. So there's 6 levels in the original Pocky and Rocky, meaning that 3 out of the 6, so half the levels had mini bosses. There is 1 mini boss in Pocky and Rocky Reshrined. So they keep the one in level 2 and actually, again, add a new attack to it, which makes you think when you're playing that for the first time, like, wow, they have remastered this really well. That is so cool. But then after that, they just kind of forget that mini bosses exist, I guess, and they never show up again. But after you beat Black Mantle / Anna at the end of level 7 in Reshrined, you go on to the true final level, where, again, it's not actually a level, it's just a fight against the final boss. And it's this giant demon guy, and he has limbs flying across the screen, and spirits show up now and then to help you take him out. Wait a minute, I feel like I've seen this somewhere before. This is just the final boss of Undertale. And now that I think about it, there's actually kind of felt like, Undertale earlier on in the game as well. Did the Undertale fanfics get mixed in with the Pocky and Rocky script again? I hate it when that happens. It always happens. I don't know, it's kind of a weird observation it feels there. But then once you beat that, that's the true ending, and I don't know. The game kind of just like flies way over your head. It's very bizarre. Like, why? Like, if they wanted to remaster the first game, cool. If they wanted to make it a completely original Pocky and Rocky game, cool. I would have been completely on board for either of those. I also would have been completely on board if they wanted to remaster the original Pocky and Rocky game and add in some extra levels along the way. Like if after Pocky had died, she came back to life and she was in the graveyard, which would have made sense as someone who died and came back to life, and then you replay the graveyard, the mountain/airship, and you proceed to the end of the game as you still did in the original game. That would have been really cool. But for them to make this weird retcon of the original Pocky and Rocky, where they take out levels that were perfectly fine and replace them with levels that are kind of so-so, and they retcon the story and add in new characters with tragic backstories that didn't need to be there, and jump all over the place and do things that, they wouldn't, again, they don't even make sense to me. But maybe, again, if you're not like me and you have the background of the first game to keep comparing everything to, maybe it makes more sense if Reshrined is like your introduction to the series. But I don't know. It's just weird that they did what they did. And on top of all of that, one of the best parts of the original Pocky and Rocky is that it's a multiplayer game. It is just so fun to play multiplayer. One person's Pocky, one person's Rocky, and you take on the world as a co-op team. It's so great. But in Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, you can only play multiplayer in free mode, not story mode. Again, story mode, as we've just gone over, you play as whatever character the game determines per level. So like Pocky is who you play as in level 1, Rocky is level 2, Pocky is level 3, Lady Uzume level 4. So it depending on the story, you have to play as certain characters in each level. You have no choice. It's only in free mode that you can pick one character and play through the entire game, and it removes all the story elements as well. The problem is that you do not unlock free mode until you beat the game once, and free mode is also the only way to play multiplayer. So you can't be at the store with a friend and be looking through the games and say, okay, what do you want to grab, and go home and play while we eat pizza and stuff. And if you pick Pocky and Rocky Reshrined off the shelf, you'll get home and realize that someone is going to have to play through the entire single player story mode first before you unlock the ability to play multiplayer. Which is one of the most important parts of a Pocky and Rocky game, is being able to play co-op. So for them to, lock that behind beating the game once is a very questionable decision. And unfortunately, there's also no online multiplayer, which would be like a massive selling point for this game. I would love to play online multiplayer. It would be really cool if they put the original on Nintendo Switch Online someday. They put Wild Guns on there, even though they, released a remaster of sorts for that. I'm curious if for Wild Guns remaster they, took a lot of liberties like they did with this one. But yeah, I don't know what to say about Pocky and Rocky Reshrined. I enjoyed it a lot more, I think, my second time, because I wasn't, it's like you get whiplash when you go in expecting it to be a straight remaster of Pocky and Rocky 1. And it just kind of throws you all over the place. And I'm all up for new content, but the way that they did it, I think, is rather questionable. And then again, free mode is probably the coolest mode, and unfortunately you don't unlock it until you beat the story mode the first time. You can just pick, the one character you like the most and kind of go through the, the whole thing as just them. And there's not all these story elements which don't make all that sense. You kind of just enjoy the game and have some fun with it. But if you're interested after all this in Pocky and Rocky, you've seen my long play of the original, and you don't want to drop like $300 or whatever it's going for these days to get the original, Reshrined doesn't do the worst job at giving you, some Pocky and Rocky fun. Unfortunately, I think that the original is better than the remaster here. Remaster, remake, retcon. I don't know what to call it. It's just so reimagining, I guess, is a good thing to call it. It's very strange. But the game, it's not even the price of like a full-priced Switch game. So if you're just looking for something fun to play, grab it. If you want to, have a fun game to play with your friends when they come over, just make sure you play through the story mode first so that you unlock multiplayer mode. So weird. And it's fun. It's definitely fun. But I definitely feel like I had a weird experience with it based on the fact that I'm just so familiar with the original game, where if any of you out there have only played Reshrined and not the original, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on it, because they'd probably be a little bit different than mine. And again, if you're looking to get like the special editions and such yourself, Strictly Limited Games also had this, I found later on, so you don't have to go through Games Rocket, which is kind of like, maybe it's like a sketch website. I don't know, like it seems really sketch, but I ended up getting what I ordered, so I guess it can't be that sketch. And they have a lot left. Last I checked, they were still at like 75% left. So obviously not that many people are worried about this special edition, which is weird considering I figured based on Pocky and Rocky's kind of, cult status and, obscurity, a lot more people would be after Reshrined when it seems like they're not. So if this seems like a, a cool thing to you, it's out there, so definitely check it out. And I appreciate you listening to me ramble about Pocky Rocky Reshrined. I just had some stuff to get off my chest about it, and hopefully at least a little bit of that made sense. If you want to know more about Pocky and Rocky, definitely check out the long play that I just did of the original Super Nintendo game, where I share a lot more information about just how it all works and some childhood memories and such in regards to that. But with that, thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed. This will probably be my last major upload before New Year's, so I hope you all have a wonderful New Year's Eve, and I'll see you in 2023. So thanks, and see you later.